Hare Krishna, welcome to Krishna Book Part 3, class number 8. We left off, we read to the 73rd chapter of the Krishna book, and we're going to continue from there, and we'll start with some kirtan in this Damodar month.
We don't hear the harmonium.
Okay. Let's take a deep breath in, fill up. Exhale, clear it out. Let's do 2 more like that. Inhale, sip in the breath. Open your mouth, let it go. 1 more sip in the breath. Gather our minds and our hearts tonight for class, and we start with offering gratitude, respect, reverence, all of our teachers. Deep breath in, opening prayer. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasare Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Kartik ki, Brahma Bhakti Asanga and beyond ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Hari Hari Bol, Gaura Premananda, Hari Hari Bol.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Great to be with everyone. So we read 3 chapters last time. Krishna arrived in Indraprastha, also known as Hastinapura. He, on the request of Yudhishthira, remember Yudhishthira Maharaj wants to have this Rajasuya sacrifice, and Jarasandha is harassing various kings, and so Uddhava said, well, let's go and take care of Jarasandha first, because we can't even have this sacrifice if we have this demoniac presence like people like Jarasandha. And so Krishna was greeted. Then he had this plan to disguise himself and Arjuna and Bhima as brahmanas to go take charity from Jarasandha. And there was a fight, and Bhima and Jarasandha fought, and Bhima followed Krishna's instruction, and Krishna knew the secret of his origin. So Jarasandha was split into 2. And then chapter 73, Krishna returns to the city, and he's just greeted with love. So let's have some reflections. Oh yeah, and in 73 also, the kings were liberated, and they offered beautiful prayers to Krishna, gave them benediction.
And did you see Nancy's question in the chat?
No, let's see that.
In the WhatsApp group.
WhatsApp group.
Well, we might actually end up answering that today.
Maybe. You want to read it, or do you want to repeat it?
Yeah, while Krishna sees the past, present, and future in all things, I wondered why he kept on saving Jarasandha, the 18 times, and then now at this point, we know we're going into the next chapter. I read ahead. Sorry, guys.
No, that's
About
good.
Shishupal, and I'm wondering, was this a way of trying to liberate Shishupal?
Why didn't
ultimately.
Krishna kill Jarasandha earlier?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
why this long process of even liberating. Can't remember the guy in the cave. He was able to liberate him, and he was able to liberate now Shishupal, and wondering whether this playing with Jarasandha was something in the long game.
Yeah, I think that when Krishna first, I may be wrong, but when he first defeated Jarasandha, Balaram indicated to him to let him go. And the explanation given by the acharyas is that the context is Krishna is fulfilling his duty as a kshatriya, and he's also descending as the Supreme Personality of Godhead to purify the world of demoniac influences. So part of what Brahma mentioned when he first came to the Lord to say there's a burden on the earth is that there is unnecessary military buildup. So there's all these armies, and Jarasandha had 18 armies worth that he ends up sending after Krishna. And Krishna, of course, kills and liberates every single person in those armies. So it appears that he is exhausting that particular military presence, liberating them all, and letting that play out over time. So the scale, the rate, the timing of how and when and whom and how many Krishna liberates varies when it comes to fulfilling his duty of, he says, yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Whenever and wherever there's a decline of religious or spiritual practice and an increase in irreligion, at that time I descend. So in addressing that, there's variation. So Jarasandha was particularly equipped to deal with Krishna, and he to try to deal with Krishna, and Krishna knew that that would be the case. So it wasn't just that he was going to like deal with him right away. So there's all this accumulated, you know, it's like if you know that there's all these nuclear warheads out there in the black market, collect them all first, diffuse them before you take out the arms dealer. I guess it's like an analogy.
Oh, thanks, that makes sense, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more? Let's have some reflections or questions from what you heard.
I feel like chapter 73 is very reminiscent of what we're going through now. And actually, on page 560, the second paragraph, this is the disease of political power. As soon as a king becomes rich in material opulences, he wants to dominate other nations by military aggression, and not just other nations, just people in general. And I feel like how lost, I mean, we're in the age of Kali Yuga, so it makes sense that we're not all of us, right? But the people that are in power are lost. They've forgotten the essence of our true nature as humans. And the last sentence, it just kind of sums up just, thus men forget the real purpose of life, to attain the favor of Lord Vishnu, the supreme personality of Godhead. And it's just like that paragraph just like sums up everything, you know, in terms of how we should be, you know, what we're seeing in life, like time and time again. It's just like decade after decade of just this complete misguidance and use of power. And I just, can Balaram come with his plow and just like start help us?
So can Krishna come again? He has, in the form of his name. And as Lord Chaitanya's associates point out, Lord Chaitanya's descent isn't meant to kill anybody. You know, if we looked at it from the standard of like Krishna in previous ages, then it would be you know, who would he spare? It's Kali Yuga. Everyone's confused and everyone's implicated. You know, we all have some way in which we're connected to the negative karma. The whole dharmic system is upside down. What Lord Chaitanya does is there's a nice verse in the 11th canto. Krishna varnam tusha krishnam sango pangastar parshitam yagnai sankirtana prayarya janti hisumeta saha. Let me find that verse for you. You can look it up later. Krishnam. It's Canto 11, Chapter 5, Text 32, 11.5.32. And it's a verse that predicts the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. And the next verse does the same as well. It's a pair of verses. And it describes that in this age of Kali, in the forthcoming age of Kali, because it's spoken before Kali started, Krishna will come in a golden color, and he'll always be chanting his own names. And he'll be accompanied by his associates and paraphernalia and weapons. And Jiva Goswami comments that the weapons of the Lord are his transcendental beauty, by which he subdues the atheistic mentality of the confused living entities. In other words, he's not actually performing like military activities. So Krishna is here in the form of Lord Chaitanya's movement, in the form of the widespread chanting of the Lord's names as a non-sectarian practice, a universal practice that has always existed in every spiritual tradition, and people have become neglectful, forgotten, ignored, procrastinated on, and here it is again. It's becoming very, very relevant and very prominent. That's the appearance of Krishna in this age. Thank you. Yeah, but that you know, I think we all resonate with that. The dynamic of the conditioned living entity forgetting their way and becoming enamored with their, you know, pet project of becoming a big deal materially. Yeah.
Springboarding off of that.
Go ahead.
Who? Me or whoever's in the room.
You go.
Okay. springboarding off of that, it makes me want to start doing some historical research of what was going on politically and, in the world 500 years ago.
With Lord Chaitanya, his appearance?
Yes, when he appeared, like what, so thinking about, okay, wherever you are on the political line right now, if we can all agree that things are chaotic right now, it seems like a good time for someone to show up. What was happening 500 years ago that caused, like what chaos was going on back then that Lord Chaitanya came? I don't know. I'm not asking you to answer that because I don't know that you would know that, but maybe you probably do. But that makes me want to do the research.
Yeah, let us know what you find. I can tell you that Advaita Acharya, who is an associate of Lord Chaitanya and older than him in the past times, he's very elderly, respected statesman. He used to teach Bhagavad Gita classes that Lord Chaitanya would come to when he was a little boy. Before Mahaprabhu appeared, Advaita Acharya was noticing in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's described that he had noticed that people were only practicing spiritual activities for show or for material gain. And they would go to their temple or whatever, and they would pray, but only so that their children would have a nice spouse and they would have opulent weddings and wealth and health and all those things, which is fine. But they had no interest actually in the divine. They had no interest in the transcendental and developing a relationship with the Supreme. And he was, as a pure devotee, he was heartbroken about that. And he prayed for Lord Chaitanya to appear. And so Krishna has his own schedule, but he gives credit to Advaita Acharya later. He does that, it's by your loud cries for me that I came. So that's one thing we can say about the deterioration of Dharma or spiritual practice, is that it became merely another tool for material advancement. It's like,
Yeah. Was that roughly the time of Henry VIII and the beheading and divorcing and of
Lord
all the
Chaitanya appeared in
wives?
1486. That's earlier, I think.
Okay.
You can look it up.
Yeah.
We still haven't learned. No.
AI has a really good long explanation. Actually, it's kind of interesting. I just pulled it up for the heck of it about the 1500s and how there was massive upheaval. It was the time when everything was flourishing, but also the Protestant Reformation, the age of exploration, and also mentions the transatlantic slave trade started like in the 1500s, and a big changes in India and the rise of the Bhakti movement. So AI has answers for everything. I don't know if it's correct or not, but
I wouldn't be completely like, I don't know that I would be able to say what Krishna's logic is, that there's something was happening at that time. I mean, things are happening at that time, but also it's 350 years before the Industrial Revolution, when English becomes the world language, the British Empire expands, technology rapidly changes the way we live, like, world population quadruples in 100 years or something, 150 years. So before all that happened, the seeds were planted. And the Acharyas like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and such were empowered. The six Goswamis were empowered. So who knows how many steps ahead he is of the whole game. But definitely when Srila Prabhupada came to America, fluent in English, the world language, with his books printed in English, and those books were like the inheritance of the Guru Parampara coming from Lord Chaitanya. All the seeds were planted anyway, and the hippies were ready for it. So, Hare Krishna.
I was gonna say how we talked about how the gift of Krishna consciousness like glimmers more brightly, like sparkles more, becomes more attractive in contrast with material existence. And we use the example of like when a jeweler uses a diamond, they use it against a black, velour velvet backdrop, whatever. And like what we're just speaking of and what happened 500 years ago, whatever it was, and what's happening now, it like makes turning to spiritual life even more attractive. And maybe if these difficult things, weren't happening, would we?
Yeah, it depends. As we mentioned last time, people have different motivations for starting to practice spiritual practice, and one of them is to get away from suffering or alleviate it. And that can be a useful, albeit short-term motivator, and it can help one to dive more deeply into the spiritual experience to actually get something that's more of a longer lasting reason for sticking with it than just feeling good. But it can light a fire under you.
I'm gonna say that's what happened in Russia. You know, the
Yeah.
rise of bhakti in Russia started at one single seed, and have been suffering for so many generations, right? So, and it's still very, big movement in Russia.
Yeah, the history of these movements spreading in different parts of the world is very interesting. You can read the biographies of Srila Prabhupada and the writings of his followers and such. But for now, we'll read the Krishna book. Any other questions or reflections before we start? Okay. Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshama Krishna 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 Pahimam Ram Rakhiva Ram Rakhiva Ram Rakhiva Rakshama Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Jai Krishna book. Chapter 74, the deliverance of Shishupala. King Yudhishthira became very happy after hearing the details of the Jarasandha episode. And he spoke as follows: My dear Krishna, O eternal form of bliss and knowledge, all the exalted directors of the affairs of this material world are always eager to receive and carry out orders from you. And whenever they are fortunate enough to receive such orders, they immediately take them and keep them on their heads. O Krishna, you are unlimited. And although we sometimes think of ourselves as royal kings and rulers of the world and become puffed up over our paltry positions, we are very poor in heart. Actually, we are fit to be punished by you. But the wonder is that instead of punishing us, you so kindly and mercifully accept our orders and carry them out properly. We are all very much surprised that your lordship can play the part of an ordinary human being. But we can understand that you're performing these activities just like a dramatic artist. Your real position is always exalted, exactly like that of the sun, which always remains at the same temperature during both the time of its rising and the time of its setting. Although we feel the difference in temperature between the rising and the setting sun, the temperature of the sun never changes. You're always transcendently equipoised, neither pleased nor disturbed by any condition of material affairs. You are the supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, and for you there are no relativities. My dear Madhava, you are never defeated by anyone. Material distinctions, this is me, this is you, this is mine, this is yours, are all conspicuous by dint of their absence in you. Such distinctions are visible in the lives of everyone, even the animals, but pure devotees are freed from such false distinctions. Since these distinctions are absent in your devotees, they cannot be possibly be present in you. After satisfying Krishna in this way, King Yudhishthira arranged to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. He invited all the qualified Brahmins and sages to take part and appointed them to different positions as priests in charge of the sacrificial arena. He invited the most expert Brahmins and sages, whose names were as follows: Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, Bharadvaj, Sumantu, Gautama, Asita, Vasishta, Chavana, Kanva, Maitreya, Kavasha, Trita, Vishvamitra, Vamadeva, Sumati, Jaimini, Kratu, Paila, Parashara, Garga, Vaishampayana, Atharva, Kashyapa, Dhaumya, Parshurama, Shukracharya, Asuri, Vitihotra, Madhuchanda, Virasena, and Akritavarna. Besides all these Brahmins and sages, he invited such respectable old men as Dronacharya, Bhishma, the grandfather of the Kurus, Kripacharya, and Dhritarashtra. He also invited all the sons of Dhritarashtra, headed by Duryodhana, and also the great devotee Vidura. Kings from different parts of the world, along with their ministers and secretaries, were also invited to see the great sacrifice performed by King Yudhishthira. And the citizens, comprising learned Brahmins, chivalrous Kshatriyas, well-to-do Vaishyas, and faithful Shudras, all visited the ceremony. The Brahmin priests and sages in charge of the sacrificial ceremony constructed the sacrificial arena as usual with a plow of gold, and they initiated King Yudhishthira as the performer of the great sacrifice. in accordance with Vedic rituals. Long years earlier, when Varuna had performed a similar sacrifice, all the sacrificial utensils had been made of gold. Similarly, in the Rajasuya sacrifice of King Yudhishthira, all the utensils required for the sacrifice were golden. Present by the invitation of King Yudhishthira to participate in the great sacrifice were all the exalted demigods, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Indra, the King of Heaven, accompanied by their associates as well as the predominating deities of the higher planetary systems, including Gandharvaloka, Siddhaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Nagaloka, Yakshaloka, Rakshasaloka, Pakshaloka, and Charanaloka, as well as famous kings and their queens. All the respectable sages, kings, and demigods who assembled there agreed unanimously that King Yudhishthira was quite competent to take the responsibility of performing the Rajasuya sacrifice. No one was in disagreement to this fact. Everyone thoroughly knew the position of King Yudhishthira because he was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. No accomplishment was extraordinary for him. The learned Brahmins and priests saw to it that the sacrifice by Maharaj Yudhishthira was performed in exactly the same way as it had been in bygone ages by the demigod Varuna. According to the Vedic system, whenever there is an arrangement for sacrifice, the members participating are offered the juice of the soma plant, which is a kind of life-giving beverage. On the day for extracting the soma juice, King Yudhishthira very respectfully received the special priest who had been engaged to detect any mistake in the formalities of the sacrificial procedure. The idea is that the Vedic mantras must be enunciated perfectly and chanted with the proper accent. If the priests who are engaged in this business commit any mistake, the checker or referee priest immediately corrects the procedure, and thus the ritualistic performances are perfectly executed. Unless perfectly executed, a sacrifice cannot yield the desired result. In this age of Kali, there is no such learned Brahmin or priest available. Therefore, all such sacrifices are forbidden. The only sacrifice recommended in this age, in the Shastras, is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Another important procedure is that the most exalted personality in the assembly of such a sacrificial ceremony is first offered worship. After all arrangements were made for Yudhishthira's sacrifice, the next consideration was who should be worshipped first in the ceremony. This particular ceremony is called Agra Puja. Agra means first and Puja means worship. This Agra Puja is similar to the election of a president. In the sacrificial assembly, all the members were very exalted. Some proposed to elect one person as the perfect candidate for accepting Agra Puja, and others proposed someone else. When the matter remained undecided, Sahadeva began to speak in favor of Lord Krishna. He said, Lord Krishna, the best amongst the members of the Kuru dynasty, Yadu dynasty, rather, and the protector of his devotees, is the most exalted personality in this assembly. Therefore, I think that he should, without any objection, be offered the honor of being worshipped first. Although demigods such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and many other exalted personalities are present in this assembly, no one can be equal to or greater than Krishna in terms of time, space, riches, strength, reputation, wisdom, renunciation, or any other consideration. Anything considered an opulence is fully present in Krishna. As an individual soul is the basic principle of the growth of his material body, Krishna is the super soul of this cosmic manifestation. All Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, such as the performance of sacrifices, the offering of oblations into the fire, the chanting of the Vedic hymns, and the practice of mystic yoga are meant for realizing Krishna. Whether one follows the path of fruitive activities or the path of philosophical speculation, the ultimate destination is Krishna. All bona fide methods of self-realization are meant for understanding Krishna. Ladies and gentlemen, it is superfluous to speak about Krishna because every one of you exalted personalities knows the Supreme Brahman, Lord Krishna, for whom there are no material differences between body and soul, between energy and the energetic, or between one part of the body and another. Since everyone is part and parcel of Krishna, there is no qualitative difference between Krishna and all living entities. Everything is an emanation of Krishna's energies, material and spiritual. Krishna's energies are like the heat and light of fire. There's no difference between the qualities of heat and light and the fire itself. Also, Krishna can do anything he likes with any part of his body. He can execute a particular action with the help of a particular part of we can execute a particular action with the help of a particular part of our body, but he can do anything and everything with any part of his body. And because his transcendental body is full of knowledge and bliss in eternity, he doesn't undergo the 6 kinds of material changes: birth, existence, growth, production dwindling and vanishing. Unforced by any external energy, he is the supreme cause of the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of everything that be. By the grace of Krishna only, everyone is engaged in the practice of religion, the development of economic conditions, the satisfaction of the senses, and ultimately, the achievement of liberation from material bondage. These four principles of progressive life can be executed by the mercy of Krishna only. He should therefore be offered the first worship in this great sacrifice, and no one should disagree. Just as by watering the root of a tree, one automatically waters the branches, twigs, leaves, and flowers, or as by supplying food to the stomach, one automatically nourishes all parts of the body. So by offering the first worship to Krishna, we shall satisfy everyone present in this meeting, including the great demigods. If anyone is charitably disposed, it will be good, very good for him to give charity only to Krishna, who is the supersoul of everyone, regardless of his particular body or individual personality. Krishna is present as a supersoul in every living being, and if we can satisfy him, then every living being will automatically be satisfied. Sahadev was fortunate to know of the glories of Krishna, and after describing them in brief, he stopped speaking. After this speech, all the members present in that great sacrificial assembly applauded, confirming his words continuously by saying, "Everything you have said is completely perfect. Everything you have said is completely perfect." King Yudhishthira, after hearing the confirmation by all present, especially by the Brahmins and learned sages, worshipped Lord Krishna according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. First of all, King Yudhishthira, along with his brothers, wives, children, other relatives, and ministers, washed the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and sprinkled the water on their heads. After this, he offered Lord Krishna various kinds of yellow silken garments and presented heaps of jewelry and ornaments before him for his use. King Yudhishthira felt such ecstasy by honoring Krishna, his only lovable object, that tears glided down from his eyes, and although he wanted to see Lord Krishna, he could not see him very well. When Lord Krishna was thus worshipped by King Yudhishthira, all the members present in the assembly stood up with folded hands and began to chant, "Jai, Jai, Namaha, Namaha." All joined together to offer their respectful obeisances to Krishna, and there were showers of flowers from the sky. In that meeting, King Shishupal was also present. He was an avowed enemy of Krishna for many reasons, especially because of Krishna's having stolen Rukmini from his intended marriage ceremony. Remember, Rukmini was engaged to him because her brother thought it was a good idea, and literally everyone else thought it was terrible. But he's holding a grudge. Therefore, he could not tolerate such honoring of Krishna and glorification of his qualities. Instead of being happy to hear the glories of the Lord, he became very angry. When everyone offered respect to Krishna by standing up, Shishupal remained in his seat. But as he became angrier at Krishna's being honored, he stood up suddenly, raised his hand, and spoke very strongly and fearlessly against Lord Krishna in such a way that Lord Krishna could hear him distinctly. Ladies and gentlemen, I can appreciate now the statement of the Vedas that, after all, time is the predominating factor. In spite of all endeavors to the contrary, the time element executes its own plan without opposition. For example, one may try his best to live, but when the time for death comes, no one can check it. I see here that, although many stalwart personalities are present in this assembly, the influence of time is so strong that they have been misled by the statement of a boy who has foolishly spoken about Krishna. Many learned sages and elderly persons are present, but still they have accepted the statement of a foolish boy. This means that by the influence of time, even the intelligence of such honored persons as those present in this meeting can be misdirected. I fully agree with the respectable persons present here that they are competent to select the personality who can be worshipped first. But I cannot agree with the statement of a boy like Sahadev, who has spoken so highly about Krishna, and has recommended Krishna as fit to accept the first worship in the sacrifice. I can see that in this meeting, there are many personalities who have undergone great austerities, who are highly learned, and have performed many penances. By their knowledge and direction, they can deliver many persons who are suffering from the pangs of material existence. There are great rishis whose knowledge has no bounds. There are great rishis here whose knowledge has no bounds, as well as many self-realized persons and Brahmins also. And therefore I think that any one of them could have been selected for the first worship, because they are worshipable, even by the great demigods, kings, and emperors. I cannot understand how you have selected this cowherd boy, Krishna, and have left aside all these great personalities. I think Krishna to be no better than a crow. How could he be fit to accept the first worship in this great sacrifice? We cannot even ascertain which caste Krishna belongs to, or what his actual occupational duty is. Actually, Krishna does not belong to any caste. Is that end quote? Yeah, Prabhupada speaking now. Actually, Krishna does not belong to any caste, nor does he have to perform any occupational duty. It is stated in the Vedas that the Supreme Lord has nothing to do as his prescribed duty. Whatever has to be done on his behalf is executed by his different energies. As natasya karyam karanam chividite, natatsamas chapyatakascha drishate. Parasya shakti vividhaiva shrute svabhava jnana balakriyacha. It's from the Upanishads. Prabhupada knows all these verses. Shishupal continued, Krishna does not belong to a high family. He is so independent that no one knows his principles of religious life. Indeed, it appears that he is outside the jurisdiction of all religious principles. He always acts independently, not caring for the Vedic injunctions and regulative principles. Therefore, he is devoid of all good qualities. Shishupal indirectly praised Krishna by saying that he is not within the jurisdiction of Vedic injunctions. This is true because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That he has, quote-unquote, no good qualities, gunayahinaha, means that Krishna has no material qualities. And because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he acts independently, not caring for conventions in social or religious principles. Shishupal continued, under these circumstances, how can he be fit to accept the first worship in the sacrifice? Krishna is so foolish that he has left Mathura, which is inhabited by highly elevated persons following the Vedic culture, and has taken shelter in the ocean where there is not even talk of the Vedas. Instead of living openly, he has constructed a fort within the water and is living in a place where there is no discussion of Vedic knowledge. And whenever he comes out of the fort, he simply harasses the citizens like a dacoit, thief, or rogue. Shishupal went crazy because of Krishna's being elected the supreme, first worship person in that meeting, and he spoke so irresponsibly that it appeared he had lost all his good fortune. Being overcast with misfortune, Shishupal continued to insult Krishna, and Lord Krishna patiently heard him without protest. Just as a lion does not care when a flock of jackals howl, Lord Krishna remained silent and unprovoked. Krishna did not reply to even a single accusation made by Shishupal, but all the members present in the meeting, except for a few who agreed with Shishupal, were very much agitated because it is the duty of any respectable person not to tolerate blasphemy against God or his devotee. Some of them who thought that they could not properly take action against Shishupal left the assembly in protest, covering their ears with their hands in order to not hear further accusations. Thus they left the meeting, condemning the action of Shishupal. It is the Vedic injunction that whenever there is blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one must immediately leave. If one does not do so, they become bereft of their pious activities and is degraded to a lower condition of life. All the kings present belonging to the Kuru dynasty, Matsya dynasty, Kekai dynasty, and Srinjaya dynasty were very angry and immediately took up their swords and shields to kill Shishupal, who was so foolish that he was not even slightly agitated, although all the kings present were ready to kill him. Shishupal did not care to think of the pros and cons of his foolish talking, and instead of stopping when he saw that all the kings were ready to kill him, he stood to fight them and took up his sword and shield. When Lord Krishna saw that they were going to fight in the arena of the auspicious Rajasuya Yajna, he personally pacified them. Out of his causeless mercy, he himself decided to kill Shishupala. When Shishupala was abusing the kings who were about to attack him, Lord Krishna took up his disc, as sharp as the blade of a razor, and immediately separated Shishupala's head from his body, the Sudarshan Chakra. When Shishupal was thus killed, a great roar and howl went up from the crowd. Taking advantage of that disturbance, the few kings who were supporters of Shishupal quickly left the assembly out of fear for their lives. Then the fortune of Shishupal's spirit soul immediately merged into the body of Lord Krishna in the presence of all, exactly as a burning meteor falls to the surface of the globe. The merging of Shishupal's soul into the transcendental body of Krishna reminds us of the story of Jaya and Vijaya, who fell to the material world from the Vaikuntha planets upon being cursed by the 4 Kumaras. For their return to the Vaikuntha world, it was arranged that both Jaya and Vijaya, for 3 consecutive births, would act as deadly enemies of the Lord, and that at the end of these lives they would return to the Vaikuntha world and serve the Lord as his associates. Although Shishupala acted as the enemy of Krishna, he was not, for a single moment, out of Krishna consciousness. He was always absorbed in thought of Krishna, and thus he first got the salvation of Sayuja Mukti, merging into the existence of the Supreme, and was finally reinstated in his original position of personal service. It's a reference to this Jaya and Vijaya pastime, which I won't recount completely, but it's given in the third canto, and it has implications for a lot of other cantos because Jaya and Vijaya are two pure devotees, but because of an interesting pastime, they temporarily left the spiritual world and appeared as great demons, the greatest demons, including Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and including Shishupal and Dantavakra, who hasn't appeared yet. So Shishupal, who's just been liberated, is one of these personalities. That's their final birth, going back to Krishna. So when Prabhupada says reinstated in his original position of personal service, that's what he's referring to. The Bhagavad Gita corroborates the fact that one who is absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Lord at the time of death immediately enters the kingdom of God after quitting their material body. After the salvation of Shishupal, King Yudhishthira rewarded all the members present in the sacrificial assembly. He generously remunerated the priests and learned sages for their engagement in the execution of the sacrifice, and after performing all the routine work, he took his bath. This bath at the end of the sacrifice is also technical. It is called the Avaprita bath. Lord Krishna thus enabled the performance of the Rajasuya Yajna arranged by King Yudhishthira to be successfully completed. And being requested by his cousins and relatives, he remained in Hastinapur for a few months more.
So what exactly was yajna? Like, what did they do?
Something about using golden utensils, offering like ghee and stuff into a fire with mantras. It's like old school yajna.
Yep.
Meaning fire sacrifice. But a very specific kind that's not possible to execute now. And being requested by his cousins and relatives, Krishna remained in Hastinapur for a few months more. Although King Yudhishthira and his brothers were unwilling to have Lord Krishna leave Hastinapur, Krishna arranged to take permission from the king to return to Dvarka, and thus he returned home along with his queens and ministers. The story of the fall of Jaya and Vijaya from the Vaikuntha planets to the material world is described in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, sort of. Part of it is. Part of it's in the 3rd canto. The killing of Shishupal has a direct link with that narration of Jaya and Vijaya, but the most important instruction we get from this incident is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being absolute, can give salvation to everyone, whether one acts as his enemy or his friend. It is therefore a misconception that the Lord acts with someone in relationship of friend and with someone else in the relationship of enemy. His being an enemy or friend is always on the absolute platform. There is no material distinction. After King Yudhishthira took his bath at the conclusion of the sacrifice and stood in the midst of all the learned sages and Brahmins, he seemed exactly like the king of heaven, and thus looked very beautiful. King Yudhishthira generously rewarded all the demigods who participated in the yajna, and being greatly satisfied, all of them left, praising the king's activities and glorifying Lord Krishna. When Shukadeva Goswami narrated these incidents of Krishna's killing Shishupal and described the successful execution of the Rajasuya Yajna by Maharaj Yudhishthira, he also pointed out that after the successful termination of the yajna, only one person was unhappy. He was Duryodhana. Duryodhana was by nature very envious because of his sinful life, and he appeared in the dynasty of the Kurus like a chronic disease personified to destroy the whole family. Shukadeva Goswami assured Maharaj Parikshit that the pastimes of Lord Krishna, the killing of Shishupal and Jarasandha, and the release of the imprisoned kings are all transcendental vibrations. And anyone who hears these narrations from authorized persons will immediately be freed from all the reactions of the sinful activities of their life. Jai! Haribol. Any reflections, comments, or questions?
I was really struck by how Sahadev basically summed up the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
It hasn't really happened yet. The battle hasn't happened yet, but as Krishna had imparted that wisdom to the sun god, there must have been this wave of knowledge that made its way through to certain people, certain devotees. So it's pretty interesting.
Yes, it's eternal knowledge. It doesn't change. It was true 5,000 years ago. It was true 5,000 years before then. It's true now. It's going to continue to be true. None of it is relative truth. Anything else?
So telling how Duryodhana was the one that had issue with this, as he's a key player in
Yeah.
much to come in the Bhagavad Gita unfolding the way, in the Battle of Kurukshetra unfolding the way it did.
Yeah, the chief amongst all of Dhritarashtra's sons. The chief rival of the Pandavas. Okay.
He was unhappy then too.
Also unhappy all around. Just not a happy person. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to have more about him in this next chapter. 75. Why Duryodhana felt insulted at the end of the Rajasuya sacrifice.
With the devil.
King Yudhishthira was known as Ajata Shatru, or a person who had no enemy. Therefore, when all the men, demigods, kings, sages, and saints saw the successful termination of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by King Yudhishthira, they were very happy. That Duryodhana alone was unhappy was astonishing to Maharaj Parikshit, and therefore he requested Shukadeva Goswami to explain this. Shukadeva Goswami said, "My dear King Parikshit, your grandfather, King Yudhishthira, was a great soul. Don't forget, Parikshit is a son of Arjuna." Wait. Yeah, so he's saying grandfather. It's not technically grandfather. It's like a shortcut for uncle here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Parikshit was born of Uttara, Arjuna's wife. Arjuna's his father. And Parikshit was the last remaining, who was it? What was his name? He sent the Brahmastra weapon. Anyway, one of the Kauravas tried to kill Parikshit in the womb with a mantra weapon. And long story. But so Shukadeva Goswami said, "My dear King Parikshit, your grandfather, actually uncle, King Yudhishthira, was a great soul. Maybe because he's the eldest uncle. I don't know. He's called grandfather. His congenial disposition attracted everyone to be his friend, and therefore he was known as Ajata Shatru, one who never created an enemy. He engaged all the members of the Kuru dynasty in taking charge of different departments for the management of the Rajasuya sacrifice. For example, Bhimasena was put in charge of the kitchen department, which is interesting because Bhima is like famous for being a big eater. One of his names is Vrikodara, which means wolf stomach. His nicknames. Duryodhana in charge of the treasury department, greedy Duryodhana. Sahadeva in charge of the reception department, Nakula in charge of the supplies department, and Arjuna in charge of looking after the comforts of the elderly persons. The most astonishing feature was that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took charge of washing the feet of all the incoming guests. Oh, Krishna, what a guy. The queen, the goddess of fortune Draupadi, was in charge of administering the distribution of food. And because Karna was famous for giving charity, he was put in charge of the charity department. In this way, Satyaki, Vikarna, Hardikya, Vidura, Santardana, and Bhurishra, the son of Bahlika, were all engaged in different departments for managing the affairs of the Rajasuya sacrifice. They were all so bound in loving affection for King Yudhishthira that they simply wanted to please him. After Shishupal died by the mercy of Lord Krishna and merged into the spiritual existence, and after the end of the Rajasuya Yajna, when all the friends, guests, and well-wishers had been fully honored and rewarded, King Yudhishthira went to bathe in the Ganges. The city of Hastinapur stands today on the bank of the Yamuna, and the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam that King Yudhishthira went to bathe in the Ganges indicates, therefore, that during the time of the Pandavas, the river Yamuna was also known as the Ganges. While the king was taking the Avaprita bath, different musical instruments vibrated, such as mridangas, conch shells, pranava drums, kettle drums, and bugles, and the ankle bells of the dancing girls jingled. Many groups of professional singers sang as veenas, flutes, gongs, and cymbals were played, and thus a tumultuous sound vibrated in the sky. The princely guests from many kingdoms like Srinjaya, Kamboja, Kuru, Keikaya, and Koshala were present with their different flags and gorgeously decorated elephants, chariots, horses, and soldiers. All of them passed in a procession with King Yudhishthira in the forefront. The executive members who had performed the sacrifice, the priests, religious ministers and Brahmins. All loudly chanted the Vedic hymns. The demigods and the inhabitants of Pitriloka and Gandharvaloka, as well as many sages, showered flowers from the sky. The men and women of Hastinapur or Indraprastha, their bodies smeared with scents and floral oils, were nicely decorated in colorful garments and dressed in colorful garments and decorated with garlands, jewels, and ornaments. Enjoying the ceremony, they threw on one another liquid substances like water, oil, butter, and yogurt. Some even smeared these on each other's bodies. In this way, they enjoyed the occasion. The professional prostitutes jubilantly smeared these liquid substances on the bodies of the men, and the men reciprocated in the same way. All the liquid substances had been mixed with turmeric and saffron, and their color was a lustrous yellow.
It's like what you do in the wedding.
Yeah. In order to observe the great ceremony, many wives of the demigods had come in different airplanes, and they were visible in the sky. Similarly, the queens of the royal family, gorgeously decorated and surrounded by bodyguards, arrived in different palanquins. During this time, Lord Krishna, the maternal cousin of the Pandavas, and his special friend Arjuna were both throwing the liquid substances on the bodies of the queens. The queens became bashful, but at the same time, their beautiful smiling brightened their faces. Because of the liquids thrown on their bodies, the saris covering them became completely wet. The different parts of their beautiful bodies, particularly their breasts and their waists, became partially visible because of the wet cloth. The queens brought buckets of the same liquid substances and with syringes sprinkled them on the bodies of their brothers-in-law. As they engaged in such jubilant activities, their hair fell loose and the flowers decorating their bodies began to fall. When Lord Krishna, Arjuna, and the queens were thus engaged in these jubilant activities, persons who were not clean in heart were agitated by lustful desires. In other words, such behavior between pure males and females is enjoyable, but it makes persons who are materially contaminated become lustful. King Yudhishthira, in a gorgeous chariot yoked to excellent horses, was present there along with his queens, including Draupadi, and their features were so beautiful that it appeared as if the great Rajasuya sacrifice was standing there in person, along with the different functions of the sacrifice. Following the Rajasuya sacrifice, there was the Vedic ritualistic duty known as Patni Sangyaja. This sacrifice, which one performs along with one's wife, was also duly conducted by the priests of King Yudhishthira. As Queen Draupadi and King Yudhishthira were taking their Avaprita bath, the citizens of Hastinapur, as well as the demigods, began to beat on drums and blow trumpets out of feelings of happiness. And there was a shower of flowers from the sky. When the king and the queen finished their bath in the Ganges, all the other citizens, consisting of all the Varnas or castes, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, took their baths in the Ganges. Bathing in the Ganges is recommended in the Vedic literatures because by such bathing, one is freed from all sinful reactions. This is still current in India, especially at particularly auspicious moments. At such times, millions of people bathed in the Ganges. After taking his bath, King Yudhishthira dressed in a new silken cloth and wrapper, and decorated himself with valuable jewelry. The king not only dressed himself and decorated himself, but also gave clothing and ornaments to all the priests and the others who had participated in the yajna. In this way, he worshipped them all. He constantly worshipped his friends, his family members, his relatives, his well-wishers, and everyone present, and because he was a Vaishnava, a great devotee of Lord Narayana, he knew how to treat everyone well. The Mayavadis, philosophers' endeavor to see everyone as God is an artificial attempt at oneness. But a Vaishnava, or a devotee of Lord Narayana, sees every living entity as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a Vaishnava's treatment of other living entities is on the absolute platform. As one cannot treat one part of his body differently from another part because they all belong to the same body, a Vaishnava does not see a human being as distinct from an animal because in both he sees the soul and the supersoul seated together. When everyone was refreshed after bathing and was dressed in silken clothing with jeweled earrings, flower garlands, long wrappers, and pearl necklaces, they looked altogether like the demigods from heaven. This was especially true of the women, who were nicely dressed, very nicely dressed. Each wore a golden belt around the waist. They were all smiling, with spots of tilaka and curling hair scattered here and there. This combination was very attractive. Those persons who had participated in the Rajasuya sacrifice, including the most cultured priests, the Brahmins, who had assisted, the citizens of all the Varnas, and the kings, demigods, sages, saints, and citizens of Pitriloka, were all very much satisfied by the dealings of King Yudhishthira, and at the end they happily departed for their residences. While returning to their homes, they talked of the dealings of King Yudhishthir, and even after continuous talk of his greatness, they were not satiated. Just as one may drink nectar over and over again and never be satisfied. After the departure of all the others, Maharaj Yudhishthira restrained the inner circle of his friends, including Lord Krishna, not allowing them to leave. Lord Krishna could not refuse the request of the king. Krishna therefore sent back all the heroes of the Yadu dynasty, Samba and others. All of them returned to Dwarka, and Lord Krishna personally remained to give pleasure to the king. In the material world, everyone has a particular type of desire to be fulfilled, but one is never able to fulfill his desires to his full satisfaction. Otherwise, the Rolling Stones wouldn't have had a hit song. It's just how it is. But King Yudhishthira, because of his unflinching devotion to Krishna, could fulfill all his desires successfully by the performance of the Rajasuya sacrifice. From the description of the Rajasuya Yajna, such a function appears to be a great ocean of opulent desires. Such an ocean is not possible for an ordinary man to cross. Nevertheless, by the grace of Lord Krishna, King Yudhishthira was able to cross it very easily, and thus he became freed from all anxieties. When Duryodhana saw that Maharaj Yudhishthira had become very famous after performing the Rajasuya Yajna and was fully satisfied in every respect, he began to burn with the fire of envy because his mind was always poisonous. For one thing, he envied the imperial palace constructed by the demon Maya for the Pandavas. The palace was excellent in its puzzling artistic workmanship and was befitting the position of great princes, kings, or leaders of the demons. In that great palace, the Pandavas lived with their family members, and Queen Draupadi served her husbands very peacefully. And because in those days Lord Krishna was also there, the palace was also decorated by his thousands of queens. When the queens with their heavy breasts and thin waists moved within the palace, and their ankle bells rang very melodiously with their movements, the whole palace appeared more opulent than the heavenly kingdom. Because a portion of their breasts was sprinkled with saffron powder, the pearl necklaces on their breasts appeared reddish. With their beautiful earrings and flowing hair, the queens appeared very attractive. After seeing such beauties in the palace of King Yudhishthira, Duryodhana was envious. He was especially envious and lustful upon seeing the beauty of Draupadi because he had cherished a special attraction for her from the very beginning of her marriage with the Pandavas. In the marriage selection assembly of Draupadi, Duryodhana had also been present, and along with other princes, he had been very much captivated by the beauty of Draupadi, but he had failed to achieve her. Once upon a time, King Yudhishthira was sitting on his golden throne in the palace constructed by the demon Maya. His 4 brothers and other relatives, as well as his great well-wisher Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were present, and the material opulence of King Yudhishthira seemed no less than that of Lord Brahma. When he was sitting on the throne surrounded by his friends and reciters were offering prayers to him in the form of nice songs, Duryodhana came to the palace with his younger brothers. Duryodhana was decorated with a helmet, and he carried a sword in his hand. He was always in an envious and angry mood, and therefore on a slight provocation he spoke sharply with the doorkeepers and became angry. By the craftsmanship of the demon Maya, the palace was so decorated in different places that one who did not know the tricks would consider water to be land and land to be water. Duryodhana was illusioned by this craftsmanship, and when crossing water thinking it to be land, he fell in. When Duryodhana, out of his foolishness, had thus fallen, the queens enjoyed the incident by laughing. King Yudhishthira could understand the feelings of Duryodhana, and he tried to restrain the queens, but Lord Krishna indicated that King Yudhishthira should not restrain them from enjoying the incident. Krishna desired that Duryodhana be fooled in that way and that all of them enjoy his foolish behavior. When everyone laughed, Duryodhana felt very insulted, and his bodily hair stood up in anger. Being thus insulted, he immediately left the palace, bowing his head. He was silent and did not protest. When Duryodhana left in such an angry mood, everyone regretted the incident, and King Yudhishthira was also very sorry. But despite all these occurrences, Krishna was silent. He did not say anything against or in favor of the incident. It appeared that Duryodhana had been put into illusion by the supreme will of Lord Krishna, and this was the beginning of the enmity between the 2 sects of the Kuru dynasty. This appeared to be a part of Krishna's plan, in his mission to decrease the burden of the world. King Parikshit had inquired from Shukadeva Goswami why Duryodhana was not satisfied after the termination of the great Rajasuya sacrifice, and thus it was explained by Shukadeva Goswami. Shri Krishna Book Ki Jai. Yes.
Ashwatthama.
Ashwatthama. He's the one who tried to kill Parikshit.
Yeah.
He also murdered the 4 sons of the Pandavas when they were sleeping by beheading them. Even Duryodhana was disgusted by that.
Yeah.
All right, any comments, questions, or reflections on that? The Rajasuya sacrifice, the completion, bath, the pure activities of celebration between the men and women, the anger and
Resentment.
resentment of Duryodhana.
Right, like what it can lead to when pride or ego is.
Hell hath no fury, right? Yeah, he takes things personally. Duryodhana. Notice when he got there, the first thing he did was yell at a doorkeeper.
Yeah.
It's like angry people who like yell at a waiter. They're just like, they have like a bone to pick with the world, you know? That's Duryodhana. Just like an axe to grind with everybody. Real pill. No one likes to be around that kind of person.
Yeah.
But Krishna was thinking ahead, and he arranged for him to be humiliated.
I'm sort of surprised. I'm sorry, were you finished?
Oh, there we go. Nancy corrected me. Parikshit is the son of Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son. That's why. So Arjuna is the grandfather, which is why Yudhishthira is also called grandfather, because he's great uncle. I forgot Abhimanyu. Good call.
Sorry, I didn't want to insult you. I just read that part.
No, correcting is never an insult. It's good for everybody. I live to be corrected. Abhimanyu was a very special person. He was married to Uttara, and he had impregnated her with Parikshit, but then the Battle of Kurukshetra happened, and he had learned a special technique how to enter into the middle of a phalanx of soldiers and fight. But he hadn't learned the second part of the technique, how to get out. So when things were very difficult, he basically went kamikaze and sacrificed his life, taking out many, many, many great warriors, and he died on the battlefield. Arjuna was heartbroken. Subhadra is actually his mother, if I'm not mistaken. Abhimanyu. But Abhimanyu posthumously was a father of Parikshit. So yes, Arjuna is his grandfather, Parikshit's, and Yudhishthira is his great uncle. And then Tanya, were you speaking?
Yeah, I was started to. I'm sort of surprised by the celebration, such, you know, how provocative it is with the throwing of the food and the liquids, you know, on here, and the, you know, the transparency of the dress and all of that. It's I don't know, it's just sort of shocking to read it like that, but it's kind of the same shock and awe that we had back in the very beginning of this book when Krishna had the gopis come up to him naked out of the Ganges. You know, it's a very provocative and interesting, and I can completely understand why Srila Prabhupada said we need to read all 9 cantos before we get here.
Otherwise, it's just misunderstood.
Yeah.
Right.
What are kids like? Young children when they're playing, you know? They may not even wear clothes, but it's completely innocent. They have nothing to gain and they have nothing to lose. For them, it's all fun and games, right? It's only when you have some kind of like chip in the game where you're like materially involved that all these distinctions is like rich, poor, male, female, whatever it is, there's some like attraction and aversion. But these are all completely liberated souls. And it was very interesting to me to hear Prabhupada talk about how like this same lila, the same pastime, when observed by the materially conditioned versus a liberated person, appears like, oh, whoa, that's kind of, you know, like dramatic or romantic or sexual,
Naughty.
whatever,
Yeah.
versus how sweet, you know, how sweet that they're all celebrating Yudhishthira's success and his, which after all, the Rajasuya sacrifice was just him trying to grandiosely celebrate Krishna. It's one giant party for Krishna and his devotees. But you can't crash that party. Is the cool thing is like they're having that, but the only people who can actually appreciate it are the ones whose hearts are cleansed. Otherwise, it's just, you know, just feeds their their mode. Thank you.
You.
All right, I think we have enough time to finish this next chapter. 76, the battle between Shalva and members of the Yadu dynasty. Okay, we had some celebrations, we had Duryodhana getting humiliated, now we got a battle. While Shukadeva Goswami was narrating the various activities of Lord Krishna, in playing the role of an ordinary human being, he also narrated the history of the battle between the dynasty of Yadu and a demon of the name Shalva, who had managed to possess a wonderful airship named Saubha. King Shalva was a great friend of Shishupala's. When Shishupala went to marry Rukmini, Shalva was one of the members of the bridegroom's party. In the fight between the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty and the kings of the opposite side, Shalva was defeated by the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty, but despite his defeat, he made a promise before all the kings that he would in the future rid the whole world of all the members of the Yadu dynasty. Yeah, all these like anti-Krishna people, they really like know each other. They got a little club. Since his defeat in the fight during the marriage of Rukmini, he had maintained within himself an unforgettable envy of Lord Krishna, and he was in fact a fool, because he had promised to kill Krishna. Usually such foolish demons take shelter of a demigod like Lord Shiva to execute their ulterior plans. And so in order to get strength, Shalva took refuge at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. He underwent a severe type of austerity during which he would eat no more than a handful of ashes daily. Lord Shiva, the husband of Parvati, is generally very merciful, and he's very quickly satisfied if someone undertakes severe austerities to please him. So after continued austerities by Shalva for 1 year, Lord Shiva became pleased with him and asked him to beg for the fulfillment of his desire. Shalva begged from Lord Shiva the gift of an airplane, which would be so strong that it could not be destroyed by any demigod, demon, human being, Gandharva, or Naga, or even any Rakshasa. Moreover, he desired that the airplane be able to fly anywhere and everywhere he would like to pilot it, and be specifically very dangerous and fearful to the dynasty of the Yadus. Lord Shiva immediately agreed to give him the benediction, and Shalva took the help of the demon Maya to manufacture this iron airplane, which was so strong and formidable that no one could crash it. It was a very big machine, almost like a big city, and it could fly so high and at such a great speed that it was almost impossible to see. So there was no question of attacking it. Wow, that's pretty far out. Even by today's standards, that's like... It appeared to be almost covered with darkness, yet the pilot could fly it anywhere and everywhere. Having acquired such a wonderful airplane, Shalva flew it to the city of Dvarka because his main purpose in obtaining the airplane was to attack the city of the Yadus, toward whom he had maintained a constant feeling of animosity. Shalva thus attacked the city of Dvarka from the sky, and he also surrounded the city with a large number of infantry. The soldiers on the surface attacked the beautiful spots of the city. They began to destroy the nice parks, the city gates, the palaces and skyscraper houses, the high walls around the city, and the beautiful spots where people would gather for recreation. While the soldiers attacked on the surface, the airplane began to drop big slabs of stone, tree trunks, thunderbolts, poisonous snakes, and many other dangerous things. Shalva also managed to create such a strong whirlwind within the city that all of Dvarka became dark because of the dust that covered the sky. The airplane occupied by Shalva put the entire city of Dvarka into distress equal to that caused on the earth long, long ago by the disturbing activities of Tripurasura. The inhabitants of Dvarkapuri became so harassed that they were not peaceful for even a moment. The great heroes of Dvarka city, headed by commanders such as Pradyumna, counteracted the soldiers and airplane of Shalva. When he saw the extreme distress of the citizens, Pradyumna immediately arranged his soldiers and personally got up on a chariot, encouraging the citizens by assuring safety. Following his command, many warriors like Satyaki, Charudeshna, and Samba, all young brothers of Pradyumna, as well as Akrura, Kritavarma, Bhanuvinda, Gada, Shuka, and Sarana, all came out of the city to fight with Shalva. All of them were Maharathis, great warriors, able to fight with thousands of men. All were fully equipped with necessary weapons and assisted by hundreds and thousands of charioteers, elephants, horses, and infantry soldiers. Fierce fighting began between the two parties, exactly like that formerly carried on between the demigods and the demons. The fighting was severe, and whoever observed the fierce nature of the fight felt his bodily hairs stand on end. Pradyumna immediately counteracted the mystic demonstration occasioned by the airplane of Shalva, the king of Salpa. By the mystic power of the airplane, Shalva had created a darkness as dense as night. But Pradyumna all of a sudden appeared like the rising sun. As with the rising of the sun, the darkness of night is immediately dissipated. With the appearance of Pradyumna, the power exhibited by Shalva became null and void. Each of Pradyumna's arrows had a golden feather at the end, and the shaft was fitted with a sharp iron head. By releasing 25 such arrows, Pradyumna severely injured Shalva's commander-in-chief. He then released another 100 arrows toward the body of Shalva. After this, he pierced each and every soldier by releasing one arrow. He killed the chariot drivers by firing 10 arrows at each one of them, and he killed the carriers like the horses and elephants by releasing 3 arrows directed toward each one. When everyone present on the battlefield saw this wonderful feat of Pradyumna's, the great fighters on both sides praised his acts of chivalry. But still the airplane occupied by Shalva was very mysterious. It was so extraordinary that sometimes many airplanes would appear to be in the sky, and sometimes there were apparently none. Sometimes the plane was visible and sometimes not visible, and the warriors of the Yadu dynasty were puzzled about the whereabouts of the peculiar airplane. Sometimes they would see the airplane on the ground, sometimes flying in the sky, sometimes resting on the peak of a hill, and sometimes floating on the water. The wonderful airplane flew in the sky like a whirling firebrand. It was not steady even for a moment, but despite the mysterious maneuvering of the airplane, the commanders and soldiers of the Yadu dynasty would immediately rush toward Shalva wherever he was present with his airplane and soldiers. The arrows released by the dynasty of the Yadus were as brilliant as the sun and as dangerous as the tongues of serpents. All the soldiers fighting on behalf of Shalva soon became distressed by the incessant release of arrows upon them by the heroes of the Yadu dynasty, and Shalva himself became unconscious from the attack of these arrows. The soldiers fighting on behalf of Shalva were also very strong, and the release of their arrows also harassed the heroes of the Yadu dynasty. But still the Yadus were so strong and determined that they did not move from their strategic positions. The heroes of the Yadu dynasty were determined either to die on the battlefield or to gain victory. They were confident that if they died in the fighting, they would attain a heavenly planet, and if they came out victorious, they would enjoy the world. The name of Shalva's commander-in-chief was Duman. He was very powerful, and although bitten by 25 of Pradyumna's arrows, he suddenly attacked Pradyumna with his fierce club, and struck him so strongly that Pradyumna became unconscious. Immediately there was a roaring, "Now he is dead! Now he is dead!" The force of the club on Pradyumna's chest was very severe, and it appeared as though his chest had been torn asunder. Pradyumna's chariot was being driven by the son of Daruka. So Pradyumna is Krishna's son, and Daruka is Krishna's charioteer. The Daruka's son is also Pradyumna's charioteer. According to Vedic military principles, the chariot driver and the hero on the chariot must cooperate during the fighting. As such, because it was the duty of the chariot driver to take care of the hero on the chariot, during the dangerous and precarious fighting, Daruka's son removed Pradyumna from the battlefield. 2 hours later, in a quiet place, Pradyumna regained consciousness, and when he saw that he was in a place other than the battlefield, he addressed the charioteer and condemned him. "Oh, you have done the most abominable act. Why have you removed me from the battlefield? My dear charioteer, I have never heard that any of our family members were ever removed from the battlefield. None of them left the battlefield while fighting. By this removal you have overburdened me with a great defamation. It will be said that I left the battlefield while fighting was going on. My dear charioteer, I must accuse you. You are a coward and emasculator. Tell me, how can I go before my uncle Balaram and my father Krishna, and what shall I say before them? Everyone will talk about me and say that I fled from the fighting place. And if they inquire from me about this, what will be my reply? My sisters-in-law will play jokes upon me with sarcastic words. My dear hero, how have you become such a coward? How have you become a eunuch? How have you become so low in the eyes of the fighters who opposed you? I think, my dear charioteer, you have committed a great offense by removing me from the battlefield." The charioteer Pradyumna replied, "My dear sir, I wish a long life for you. I think that I did nothing wrong, for it is the duty of the charioteer to help the fighter in the chariot when he is in a precarious condition. My dear sir, you are completely competent in the battlefield, but it is the duty of the charioteer and the warrior to protect each other in a precarious condition. I was completely aware of the regulated principles of fighting, and I did my duty. The enemy all of a sudden struck you with his club so severely that you lost consciousness. You were in a dangerous position, surrounded by your enemies. Therefore, I was obliged to act as I did." Chapter 76, Ki Jai. Jai. All right, any reflections on that chapter? or on anything you heard so far today, or on anything in general, ever?
Just in life.
I think it's really, again, sweet about how, again, it's over and over, like there's a lot of repetition of things that Krishna does or how people greet Krishna, just to kind of get it into our memories. And like, you know, as we listen to, you know, Krishna washing the feet of, you know, his friends, you know, it was definitely reminiscent, like in Christianity, of like Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And I thought that was really sweet, that that's a theme that kind of goes through different lineages and different religions and things like that, of like the mercy and the humility of God and how he comes to earth to, you know, save us, to give us vision, to, you know, help us get closer to him. And yet, you know, he humbles himself, you know, lower than any of us generally humble ourselves. And so he gives these demonstrations of like what we're supposed to do. And I just think that's really beautiful.
As does his devotee.
Yeah.
The many disciples of Srila Prabhupada who met him and were among the first disciples, you know, who met him like in New York City, for example, when he lived in the Bowery. They noted that at the time, nobody understood who they were dealing with. And Srila Prabhupada would invite people and, you know, feed them whatever you could afford. Usually just, he would slice apples at the beginning when he had no money or donations to actually cook a meal. He would feed them, wash everything himself, and do everything. And, you know, he would like line up for the bathroom that they're all sharing with all of them until someone was like, can we help you? Is there anything we can do for you? And he's like, no, I'm glad you asked. You know, and then as people became purified with their exposure to bhakti and their chanting and their hearing Bhagavad Gita and their association with him, many of them started to surrender. And they were reflecting about how Srila Prabhupada had to be so humble to come to a place where nobody was going to give him any respect just right off because of who he was. Pure devotee of Krishna, what does that mean? You know, what does it mean, pure devotional service, freed from the modes, no material attachments? Like, he didn't advertise himself. He didn't glorify himself. He just tried to serve Krishna and gave Krishna to others. And when they became purified enough, they could see like, oh, wow, we've really been taking him for granted. Like a child who grows up, like turns to their parents and is like, thank you for everything, for all those late nights I kept you up by not calling when I should have, and for all the times I snuck out of the house, broke curfew, and the time I crashed the car, and all those diapers that you changed and everything. Thank you, you know, because you don't really get it at the time. So there's a way in which, yes, Krishna himself is doing that. He's playing the very humble role, and so are his devotees. Thank you. Tanya, in the spirit of any reflections on anything in life, I love your little mermaid mug. Yeah, that's either I or Kishori or both are into mermaids. I'll let you guess who.
I think we all know who.
Because you married a mermaid.
Anything about Krishna or his devotees?
I was just going to say how many times I've jumped to conclusions without having all the facts. I'm thinking of Pradyumna waking up and all of a sudden really going off, and you know, happily his charioteer told him, I understood all that. Just, you know, chill out, relax.
Yeah. He calmly explained the situation without getting like riled up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does it.
I didn't make you retreat because, you know, you were about to die. You were unconscious. So yeah. Okay, more? Anything?
I was just kind of surprised that they asked for an airplane, that there was airplanes way back, however
We
thousands of
don't
years
know
ago.
what kind of conveyance it was. It doesn't appear to have been operating like under like any principle of aerodynamics.
Didn't say
Aeronautics.
city. It's like
It was as big as a city. It was
Yeah.
in the sky as quickly as like a whirling firebrand. Sometimes it was invisible. Sometimes, yeah, it's like a spaceship. You had with a cloaking device on it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's invisible, and sometimes it was visible. Sometimes it had illusory. It could be on the ground. It could be in the sky. It looked like it was over here. It was over there. So it had like magical abilities. This is kind of dipping into, you can see these kinds of ideas in sci-fi. Basically, he got Shiva's benediction, and then received the help of the demon Maya Danava, who was the same demon who also had befriended the Pandavas and gave them their assembly house, the one that had parts of it that were liquid but looked solid, and parts that were solid but looked liquid, that Duryodhana had stepped into and made a fool of himself. So this creator, this architect, was particularly gifted. Who knows what kind of skills he had, but he manufactured a spaceship. Really cool.
Well, I wondered if it was supposed to be symbolic of something else that I wasn't quite getting, or if it was supposed to be an airplane.
It was in the sky, and it's called I think the Sanskrit word for it, I can look it up, but I think something like it's said that it floated in the ether. It was like a floating conveyance.
Interesting.
Prabhupada translates it as airplane.
Okay.
Any other?
That just
Reflect-
makes you wonder how really advanced we think we are.
Yeah, we think we've got like,
Yeah.
look at us. We have an iPhone. I mean, I sometimes feel like the statements of the Bhagavatam have to dumb it down for us. Like this airplane is dropping things on top of the city like thunderbolts. What does that mean? What does it mean when an airplane drops thunderbolts?
Yeah.
What kind of a bomb is that? We don't know, but we can all kind of like relate to lightning and thunder. So Prabhupada's translated the Sanskrit word, which I don't even know what it is, but it's referencing something we can actually understand from our point of view, or they could have understood 5,000 years ago when the Bhagavatam was spoken as a thunderbolt from an airplane. But what actually was it? We don't know. We'll never know. It's not important. But it was my perspective on reading these passages is it's way up there. It's way beyond what we've got. And sometimes we understand it, sometimes we don't. And so it uses analogical statements so we can actually sort of understand what it is. It's like lightning dropping from the sky, He was carpet bombing Dwarka.
When you look at all the ancient like hieroglyphics and all the ancient markings and all these older civilizations and everything, I mean, there's definitely references to spaceships and spacemen and all those kinds of things. So why not?
Yeah.
There's so little that we actually know.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Yeah.
Totally. Pyramids.
The actual Sanskrit here, I think I found the Sanskrit verse. A flying city of iron.
City of Iron.
It's called the Flying City of Iron. It's like a floating city.
Kind of like there was the city in the water.
Dwarka. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we
Well.
prepare for Damodar Rasa?
Yeah. Krishna book ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Right.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So for this week, please read chapters 74, 75, and 76 and give reflections. And we're going to pick up with Pradyumna's re-entering the battle in 77. And without further ado, we're going to start with the Damodarashtakam. Prepare for
Get your
that.
candles. Move to your altar.
So I turn
Will
this
you-
off?
Yeah, we'll use my computer.
Okay. We want to end the recording?
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not recording. Hare
Hare Krishna.